Hey everyone, it's Dawn from Happy Home and Garden with John and Dawn, and today I'm in sunny Florida visiting my mom in St. Cloud. And today we're going to make a shopping bag out of a chicken feed bag. It's also really a bit windy today, so I'm going to voice over the rest of the video.
So here's what the front of the bag looks like. This is a 30-pound feed bag. The original size is 23 by 17. And this is the back of the bag. Now this is the material. It kind of looks like a woven plastic. It's a very strong material. In case you're wondering what my t-shirt says, it says, "This girl loves sewing." I actually got this recently at a thrift shop for 75 cents. So here I am seam ripping the bottom. This is the first step. The bottom is actually made of some sort of paper material, so we don't want that on the final bag. A funny thing happened while I was seam ripping. The wind really kicked up and the bag kicked in my face. As you can see by my expression here, I was really not thrilled, but you know, grin and bear it. So as you can see here, there's more seam ripping on the bag. As I get to the end, get all those little threads out of there and pick off the rest. Yes, it does make a little bit of a mess. So I'm a big fan of keeping things out of landfills, and my mom has a fire pit. So I threw that in there, and the next time she has a little fire, it'll turn to ashes and go back into the earth. So now I'm washing the bag. Definitely do this because it's kind of smelly. It smells like that, feed stuff that was in it. So I think I just used like water or something, but you could use a vinegar if you want. So this is the inside of the bag. And what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the edges and flattening them down so this creates a nice flat seam on each side. Do not use an iron because it is made of plastic. Yeah, and you don't want to melt it. Next step is to align the bottom of the bag, and we're going to be sewing on the seam that was created by the removal of that paper piece that was on the bottom. So now I'm inserting into the sewing machine. I did use a wide zigzag stitch, and always be sure to go back and forth at the beginning of the stitch just to cover the stitches so that when you cut off the ends of the thread, it doesn't unravel later. I do like the wide zigzag stitch because I find it's stronger than a straight stitch, but you can use a straight stitch if you want. And here's the end of that stitch, going back and forth as I mentioned before, and then take it out of the machine and snip the little ends of the thread. Unfortunately, the back of the stitches got a little funny looking, but that's okay because in the next step this is going to be covered, but this is to show you what the seam looks like so far. Next step is to cut down just to the very edge of the stitch that you just did. We're going to do this on each side. Here's the first one, just open it up a little bit. And here's the second side. Give that a snip just to the very, very edge. Next is to fold down each section over the stitch, which you can see right here. This is each side. And then put it into the sewing machine and again go back and forth on the first part of the stitch so it doesn't unravel later. And here's the end of the stitch, going back and forth again. Also, I just wanted to let you know I am outside doing this voiceover, so you will hear a lot of bird noises and traffic and other miscellaneous noises as we do this. And then snip the ends of the thread, snip, snip, and this is what the stitch looks like. This one actually came out better. Next, we're going to be making the gusset. This is done by sticking your hand in the bag all the way to the very edge of the bag and then making this little point here. As you can see my hand flattening it down. Don't mind my thumb. I actually had banged it with a hammer a few weeks back, so it's a little purple. This is the area for the next stitch. I did take a tape measure and a magic marker and did a little dot just at the very end so I'd know where to do the stitch. At first I thought that I could eyeball it, so I did a little dotted line here. But then soon realized that I really needed to measure this out, so I grabbed the tape measure and found out that I was way, way off. So don't do a dotted line ahead of time. So this is the actual measurements that I came up with. It's 4 on the sides, 3 up the middle, and then 5.5 across from left to right. So that long line at the top is where we're going to be doing the next stitch. Again, go back and forth on the first part of the stitch. And then at the end, go back and forth on the stitch again, and then snip all the ends of the threads. And here is what it looks like. Now we're going to do the other side. One thing to check is the bottom of the bag and make sure that that seam isn't curled over on itself, because at one point I noticed that, so I had to adjust it. And here's the end of that stitch, going back and forth at the very end to cover the stitch again, and then snipping off the little threads. And this is what that stitch looks like. And this is what the inside of the bag looks like. This is the gusset. So if you like that size, then definitely go with what I recommended here. Now I'm just cutting at the very edge of the stitch on both sides of the bag, as you can see here. Unfortunately, I don't know how to recycle those ends, so those went into the trash. For extra reinforcement, I did go back over each of the sides with another zigzag stitch. And making sure to go over the stitches at the very beginning and end of the stitch, and snip off the ends. And then flip over the bag and do it on the other corner. And this is what the bottom of the bag looks like. Here are the stitches on each side and on the bottom. Next step is to figure out how much of a hem you'd like at the top. In my case, it was 4 inches because that was right above the logo of the company. Also, by having a larger hem at the top, it makes a nice bulky area for the strap, so it makes the bag stronger. So I took the tape measure and I measured around and around and around, making sure I had 4 inches all the way around the bag. Next step is to fold the bottom of the bag like shown here so that the bag lays flat to make it easier to put into the sewing machine. I measured about 3 3/4 inches from the right edge of the presser foot, and then I put a piece of painter's tape on the right hand side so that I could have something to guide me as I sewed. And here I am finishing up the end of that stitch. Next I measured 3/4 inch, and then I put it down onto the machine and checked where my 3/4 inch mark was, and then I put a piece of painter's tape on the right there. It's easier for me to look at painter's tape than those little lines on the machine. So this is where I put the other row of stitches. So the measurement ended up being 3/4 inch from the right hand side of the bag to the left hand side of the stitch. And the measurement between the inner part of the stitches was around 3 inches. As a side note, I did end up with a 4 1/8 and 4 1/4 hem, so the measurements might be a little off when you try to do this yourself. For the last part of the bag, you'll need something for the straps. In our case, my mom had some extra blue ribbon, which is kind of fitting for chickens, because blue ribbons and chickens, you know, that sort of thing. It was 1.5 inches wide and roughly 26.5 inches long when folded in half. Next, we need to locate the center of the sides. So you find the bottom seam, and then you look to find the middle of that seam and fold it all the way down to the bottom of the bag. And here it is on the opposite side. You're looking again at the side seam and the middle of that side seam there. And then we fold both ends and flatten it down. Next is to figure out where you'd like the ribbon. In my case, I used 3 inches from the left-hand side of the bag to the left-hand side of the ribbon, making sure that the bottom of the ribbon was the correct side facing out of the bag, because sometimes you have the shiny side and matte side. I did have to reposition the pins a few different times, but eventually I did get the measurement correct. Also make sure to check the ribbon orientation. Make sure that it's not twisted inappropriately. So after I got both sides pinned in, I did check the measurement. It's about 7 inches in between, so now we're going to repeat it on the opposite side. And now for the really fun part is to put the bag in the machine. You got to kind of curl the edges there and then make sure it's a little flattened so that you can manage to get it under the presser foot. Next, we're going to be making a rectangle stitch. First, we're going to go down the right-hand side of the ribbon until it reaches the bottom. Be sure to remove your pins as you go so you don't ruin your needle. Now, when you get to the bottom, you're going to turn the knob of the machine so the needle is in the down position on the material. Then you're going to turn the bag and start your stitch again. Now, I always try to make sure the needle is on the right-hand side before I turn the bag. Once the bag is in position on the bottom of the ribbon, then sew that piece down and then turn the bag again with the same method. Put the needle to the right and then position it down into the material and then turn the bag again and then go up the other side of the ribbon and then over the next section so that you're going to be completing a rectangle on the back of the ribbon. So here are the stitches on the front and the back of the bag. The rectangle pattern of the stitches did hold really, really well. I was thinking about doing an X in the middle, but later decided to just do a center stitch up the center of the ribbon instead. As a side note, make sure that the ribbon is not in the path of the needle. I accidentally sewed over the ribbon and had to unstitch it and then start again. Then repeat the sewing on all 4 ends of the ribbon, and then turn the bag right side out. Use your finger to stick through the end of the bag and poke out all the little corners. And voila, your bag is done. Woohoo! Now I'm going to try to see how much this bag fits. I've got 4 half gallons of almond milk, and it looks like the bag will fit all 4 very comfortably with some room to spare. There is one thing that I would do a little bit differently if I did this again in the future is the straps. The ribbon straps do tend to dig into my shoulders a little bit when it's very, very heavy, as you can see here. But everything else I would definitely do the same the next time. Oh, by the way, if you could please subscribe. We're a really small channel and we super appreciate new subscribers. And do click that bell for notifications because that way you'll know when we post a video. We do post at random intervals, so you never know when we might post something. If you like do-it-yourself and gardening and home improvement and more sewing videos and thrifting videos, definitely check out our channel because we got some fun stuff.
And we even have a video of me acting like a chicken in my kitchen. It's super funny. So go check that out. Thank you so much. Bye.